Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you don't know, my name is Joshua and this is Rated J Entertainment, a place where I talk about all the games that I love and the games that I am playing or trying to learn. And I am a longtime fan of Bethesda Game Studios, having started with Morrowind back in 2004 all the way up to being one of 10 Starfield fans in the entire universe, 15 if you count the multiverse. But in this video today, I wanted to take time to discuss in detail the various DLC, or expansion packs for us old-timers, for their games. Stories, characters, additions, and the overall vibe of how well they fit into the game series they're a part of. I write these scripts as I go along, and in this very moment, I have no idea how in-depth I will get per expansion, but I will be ranking them from my least favorite to my favorite. Heavy emphasis on my favorites. This will be a deeply biased list. After having a discussion in the Discord, which you can join, link in the description below, I decided that I would just cover the story DLCs on this list and not things like Fallout 4's Contraptions DLCs or things like Oblivion's Player Housing DLCs like the Fighter Stronghold, even though it's a personal favorite of mine, or the Wizard Tower, or Skyrim's Hearthfire. That may be a separate list, I just don't know yet. So in release order, our contenders will, like I said, just be the story DLCs, because I wasn't really sure that something like Fighter's Stronghold could compare to Far Harbor, or Hearthfire could compare to, you know, something like Shivering Isles. So in release order, our contenders are Tribunal, released on November 8th, 2002, and Blood Moon, released on June 3rd, 2003 for Morrowind. Oblivion also comes in with two expansions here, those being Knights of the Nine, released on November 21st, 2006, and Shivering Isles, released on March 26th, 2007. Moving into their first foray into the Fallout universe, we have Fallout 3 coming in with a landmark 5 expansions, starting with Operation Anchorage, released on January 27th, 2009, The Pit, released March 24th, 2009, Broken Steel, released May 5th, 2009, Point Lookout, released June 23rd, 2009, and lastly, Mothership Zeta, released August 3rd, 2009. Next up, we have Fallout New Vegas. I know New Vegas is not technically a Bethesda game, only a Bethesda published game, but considering it is in a very similar vein to all the other games on this list, and I'm a big fan of New Vegas, it just felt weird to not include it. So Fallout New Vegas is coming in with a very hefty 4 expansions. Starting with Dead Money, released December 21st, 2010, Honest Hearts, released May 17th, 2011, Old World Blues, released July 19th, 2011, and lastly, there is Lonesome Road, released September 20th, 2011. And honestly, I gotta say, looking at all of these release dates just reminds me that if you're a Fallout fan like me who was introduced to Fallout via the modern games, starting with 3, then October 2008 to September 2011 was such a wild time to be alive, dude. Content dropped damn near non-stop. We honestly had no idea how good we had it. But I don't want to rant on that. Moving on to Skyrim, we have 2 contenders here. Dawnguard, released June 26th, 2012, and Dragonborn, released December 4th, 2012. And moving back into Fallout, we have Fallout 4. I am including one DLC here with a workshop focus, but only because it did have a good amount of story backing it up. I know like the Vault one does too, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually care. So the first entry is Automatron, released March 22nd, 2016, followed up with Far Harbor, released May 19th, 2016, and lastly we have Nuka World, released on August 29th, 2016. And also we have one entry here for Bethesda's newest IP, Starfield, which I hope will grow in the future, but at the time of writing and recording we have just one, Shattered Space. That gives us a total of 19 expansions between 7 games, a healthy sum. Now, as I stated earlier, please remember, this isn't an official ranking system. These are just my own personal thoughts based on my history with the expansion material, and I'll explain why I feel that way. As always, let's discuss it in the comments about your favorites and where these DLCs land for you. In a choice out of this world, starting at number 19 with Fallout 3, I gotta give last place to Mothership Zeta. And I gotta be honest, there was a time when Fallout 3 could literally do no wrong for me. This is one of the times it did wrong for me, though. While Mothership Zeta did have some cool enemy types like abominations and guardian drones, I just found it to be a bit more tedious than I was expecting. It felt less like an RPG expansion and more just like a really bland shooting gallery, a shooting gallery that wasn't even done all that well. To me, it didn't really fit the Fallout 3 vibe, and I don't believe it fits well in the overall vibe of the series as a whole, despite some cool and interesting characters like Elliot and Toshiro. But I gotta say, the addition of alien weapons was kinda novelty when you're playing the expansion, but the worst part is that the ammo is different from the alien ammo you get in the base game, so it still kinda limits your use of things like the alien blaster or the fire lance. That, to me, a major wasted opportunity. Would I recommend playing Mothership Zeta? Yeah, sure, of course. Maybe once, but only because it comes with the Game of the Year edition. But subsequent playthroughs of Fallout 3, honestly, I think you could avoid it entirely, and it would not negatively impact your game. And continuing on with the theme of otherworldly disappointment, we have number 18, which is Starfield's only entry. Shattered Space. Now, I can hear some people in our Discord server already getting mad at me as we speak here, because we have a substantial population of Starfield fans who actually enjoyed Shattered Space. But as a Starfield fan, this one just didn't hit for me. I think Shattered Space has cool ideas, and the Vortex Phantoms were interesting enemies, but aside from Dazra having some somewhat interesting quests and a good deal of visual interest, I wasn't the biggest fan of Varun Kai. I think it blends into the base game of Starfield well enough, but that's the problem. It just feels like more base game Starfield to me, not what I've come to expect from a Bethesda DLC. The addition of newer Varun weapons was cool and all, but I don't think there were a lot of standouts, at least not that I can remember. I also think some of the story implications get way too glossed over. Andrasia possibly being kicked out of the Varun faith is a huge moment, and if it happens, I feel like she forgives you, like, immediately, and it just feels weird. Another issue is the endings of Shattered Space not being added to the Unity. That was a bit of a no-no for me. Would I recommend it? Sure. Considering it's the only story expansion for Starfield to date, it's worth a go if you're really hunting for new Starfield content, but I would urge you to wait for a sale. You may like it more than I do, but I found it lacking in many areas. I hope future Starfield story expansions will improve where Shattered Space lacks. Mossy, Rismodius, Anna, I know, I don't mean to put it this low. Love y'all. But let's move on forward. Mostly leaving the themes of outer space behind, we are taking our first steps onto terra firma here, and we are landing squarely in Nuka World. Nuka World is a really cool idea, but in a game like Fallout 4 that was seriously lacking in the role-playing department, the idea to roleplay as a raider and lead not one, but several raider gangs and a hostile takeover of the Commonwealth sounded cool as cool can be. But in execution, it was really, to me, just another settlement DLC. In its latter half, it was just an okay story. Porter Gage was actually a cool companion, and thematically, the three raider gangs added to the game were cool. Operators, Disciples, and the Pack had really cool aesthetics, and Nuka World itself had very interesting locations and enemies. I enjoyed seeing Nuka Lurks make a return, but the game's lack of tie-in to the main game kinda sucked. You can bring raiders to the Commonwealth, but really, why would you? You can't even use them to attack the Institute, to my knowledge. That would have been a pretty amazing twist, being able to use raider gangs to kind of do the main quest. So, that was kind of a letdown to me. Again, I just don't see the purpose of bringing them. But I gotta say, I shouldn't judge based on what could be. But Far Harbor for me had set a precedent of main game and expansion kind of intertwining, even in smaller ways, so it didn't seem crazy to add the Raiders as another main faction. And the lack of a decent, morally good guy option was a bit of a letdown. In a game where liberation was the main focus, it was odd to see that portion of the questline was kinda bare and almost nowhere to be seen in Nuka World. The added enemies like Gator Claws and Bloodworms are pretty fun, and I did enjoy exploring Nuka World and fighting some of these new enemies. In terms of visual appeal and fun and exploration, yeah, Nuka World definitely has a lot to offer. Would I recommend Nuka World? For the completionist, yeah. But if you want to fight raiders, base game Fallout 4 has plenty of cool factions, and if you want to lead raiders, this is the place to be. I just don't see much incentive, as Fallout 4 is really good at breaking your immersion in your own roleplay unless you conform specifically to the ideals of like whatever main faction you're playing, or if you just specifically conform to the idea of parent looking for child. And running across the country, we have number 16, Old World Blues. I have a feeling this one might be a contentious one because as a New Vegas fan, I know how passionate that community is. And when it gets compared to Bethesda titles, I know how rabidly angry they get. That said, you know that feeling when you're playing a game you love, but you get to that part? You know that part. That part that drags on and is the part you somehow block out of your memory when you're not playing it because the rest of the game is so damn good? Yeah, for me, when playing New Vegas, Old World Blues is that part. I realized the mood for Old World Blues was quirky, over-the-top 50s sci-fi mad science, but that just really didn't appeal to me at all. That isn't to say it was all bad. The first three on this list I can see almost were universal negatives from me besides a few small parts, but that isn't the case here. I actually liked a lot of the characters introduced and how all the DLC was weaved together into a more personal story for the character, you know, the courier. It weaves in Elijah and his acquisition of the collars. Joshua Graham mentions the Big Empty and Honest Hearts, and another courier working for Caesar. It was the first time you heard Ulysses speak, which was really cool to me after they had been hyping him up. Christine Royce's Circle of Steel story being tied in from Dead Money, also really good. I think Old World Blues did a lot of cool things, but my god, the think tank was the most annoying set of characters ever created. The dialogue slog at the beginning is truly horrendous. If you want context and information after the initial setup, between all those doctors in the think tank, that is an absurd amount of dialogue. Some of it, I will say, quite good, but most bits so over the top in their ridiculousness that I had a hard time even enjoying it for its joking tone. It was such a tonal switch from the main game, from Dead Money, and from Honest Hearts. Even Lonesome Road that came after was much more in line with the previous expansions on New Vegas than Old World Blues. And Old World Blues just kinda sticks out like a sore thumb, which makes sense because it's a sore spot on the New Vegas record, to me. The whole plot twist with Dr. Mobius and the think tank was actually pretty decent, but came way too late for me. At that point, I was all ready to be just over and done with Old World Blues. Also, as an aside, I know people love the sink as a player home and the personalities and the characters of the appliances that inhabit it, but I also thought that was overdone and kinda lame. Toaster, hilarious, but after a few lines of dialogue from him, I was over it, and I was over it pretty quickly. Some of the new weapons and enemies were pretty cool, and seeing the origin of some of the Mojave Wasteland species was also a lot of fun. As for newer content, I gotta say, just to keep it positive, I love the K9000 even if it was a bit annoying at times, and the Proton Axe was a great addition to the game. Saturnite Fist was a lot of fun, and so was Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon. I also loved Christine's COS silencer rifle. Would I recommend it? Yes, but only because some of the weapons you get are really fun to bring to the Mojave, and there's a lot of fun lore to learn and characters you can explore in new ways from previous stories like Dead Money. It adds a lot of depth to an already good cast of characters, just none of those characters appear in Old World Blues outside of voice notes. And returning to the Capital Wasteland, we have Operation Anchorage coming in cold at number 15. Actually, I gotta say, I had a tough time placing this one because there's a lot I really liked about it, so having it this low on the list kind of feels off, but compared to everything else above it, I do think for me personally it's a fair ranking. This actually gave some much needed characterization and insight to the Brotherhood Outcast, which was kind of severely lacking in the base game. It was nice to see the more fanatical and technologically focused original Brotherhood in the limelight. You could see by their use of the Gary clones how willing they were to get their hands dirty. While joining the Brotherhood Outcast is never an option, this is the closest you'll really ever get to that, should that be a roleplay option you're looking for. Showing up in Outcast power armor can get you some unique dialogue, The story itself is fun, taking place in a simulation meant to be a training simulation about the liberation of Anchorage from the Chinese army during the Sino-American War. It's a nice break from the brown, green, and gray wastelands of DC. You'll see mountains, snow, and trees, which is fun, and building a strike team is also kind of a pretty good time. There was a lot to enjoy, even if it was light on roleplay and mostly just shooting galleries. The enemies it brought to the table to fight, like the Crimson Dragoons and the Chimera tanks, were an absolute blast. I had a fun time taking those down, and the objectives felt fun and fresh, far out of the bounds of what we were used to in the base game. The rewards you can leave with are nothing to scoff at either. Should you do this expansion before you have power armor training, you will end the simulation with power armor training, which is great because you'll have a fresh new set of winterized T-51B power armor to slip on and traverse in the wastes with. In addition to that, you'll get a trench knife, Gauss rifle, Chinese stealth armor, and General Jiang Wei's shock sword. All items that really bring some fun and flavor to your time in the Capital Wasteland. Would I recommend Operation Anchorage? Most certainly. For higher and mid-level characters, mainly because the quests are a fun break from the base game, and the rewards are very much worth it. But if you're later in the game, it might not be essential to play unless you're a completionist, but if you're mid to lower level, you may want some exceptional gear early on. This is a worthwhile story expansion to tackle, and if you want power armor and a really good energy weapon, you will be in the right place. Only downside would be that early on, you won't be in a good position to keep those items repaired or be able to afford their upkeep should you not be much of a mechanic. Even so, Operation Anchorage is a pretty great time, and I loved it. Putting on our spurs that go jingle jangle jingle and making a very lonely appearance at number 14 is Lonesome Road. One, I kind of feel bad for putting so low, but it did have one thing holding it back for me, and that was Ulysses. Being that this was the culmination of seeds laid at the very beginning of New Vegas in Prim, and the conclusion to the story between the Courier and Ulysses, it was pretty good, but Ulysses has some of the most annoying dialogue. Not as bad as the Think Tank, but at times it does come pretty close. I quite enjoyed the divide, the marked men, and learning more of Edie's story, and I will say I actually enjoyed Ulysses as a character, and I think they did a good job with him. He just talks too damn much. I love dialogue in RPGs, especially well written, but it's possible to have too much of a good thing in his constant bull and two-headed bear monologues they're kind of pretentious and annoying, especially when he said he could have killed Joshua Graham, like, okay buddy, whatever you say. And I know I'm sounding negative and I don't mean to. That just needed to be said. Roger Cross did a great job voice acting Ulysses, I must say, and it was nice to finally go through that gate at the bus wreckage that had all the Courier 6 graffiti on it. The story has you traveling through the divide and has some impressive set pieces. Setting off warheads and launching a nuke was pretty wild, and overall it wraps up the DLC story of New Vegas quite well. Again, I just think Ulysses' dialogue is something you enjoy at first, then endure later on to get the full scope. Enemies like the Tunnelers and Marked Men really stood out to me in this DLC. They are reskins of the Pitts Trogs and the Vault 22 Spore Carriers, but man, they are tough in a fight and damn scary to boot. Same as the Marked Men. Tough enemies, but ultimately a very fun experience. Armors added to this DLC that always stood out to me were the different riot gears, being the standard, advanced, and elite riot gear. The Marked Men armors and weapons like the Bowie knife, Blood Nap, Fist of Rar, Red Glare, shoulder-mounted machine gun, 2 unique grenade rifles, and Old Glory, a flagpole. Would I recommend Lonesome Road? Hell yeah. It's a great way to wrap up the DLC story told in New Vegas, and I think it is a really nice send-off to this beloved title. I realize the amount of dialogue added was to wrap up as much as they could, but it's still a bit overdone. Even still, it is worth playing, and not just for the completionists. And here is unlucky number 13, and I know adding Automatron above a New Vegas DLC might be seen as blasphemous, but I gotta say, the amount of time and fun I've had building and customizing robots in Automatron is genuinely insane. When I played it on my Minutemen run, Every settlement of mine had a robot workbench and at least 2 robots assigned for security. At the castle, I had built Sarge Mark II, which was an insanely overpowered sentry bot, and Ada there, who I had heavily upgraded, and I remember I had built another robot called the Minute Bot, who served as security at the castle. It was just a good time. The downside, maybe, a lack of armor and weapons. The robot armor and the Tesla T60 power armor were awesome, but the Mechanist stuff was... it's always been kind of to me. I didn't love it in Fallout 3. I didn't particularly love it in Fallout 4 either. Ada, though, was a fun companion, and it was cool that she was fully customizable. The Rust Devil's Raider gang was a fun addition to a game that was already full of cool raider groups to fight, and the story itself, while a bit basic and rudimentary, was still fun to me. Would I recommend Automatron? Most certainly. Building robots is a good time, and the scrapbot enemies introduced in this game make for tough challenges, even for late game characters. The combos of robots you can make are pretty impressive and well worth sinking a couple hours into. Just writing about this and recording this right now is making me want to play it and build some more robots again. And steel yourself, because we're coming in at number 12. We have The Pit for Fallout 3, and a DLC I had so much fun with. While it isn't my favorite expansion for Fallout 3, when I finally got to play the expansions as a teenager, when my mother had got me a copy of Fallout 3 Game of the Year, I got out of the vault, did Megaton and a couple of small things, and once I hit level 5, I immediately ran for the pit. I had played so much Fallout 3 and heard random stories about the pit, I had no idea what to think. I just knew tales of the Scourge, led by, at the time, Paladin Lyons, and the stories of Paladin Kodiak, who was raised there. When I had arrived and crossed the bridge and I saw the pit was Pittsburgh, yeah, I was pretty excited. A story of raiders running a city and slaves wanting to rebel was pretty enticing, but it had fun, morally gray twists, and at the end it really made you question who the bad guys really are. This kind of storytelling was everything Nuka World should have been. In terms of aesthetics, new enemies, themes, armor, and weapons, this was a story expansion that did everything I wanted at the time, and I still have fond memories of crossing that bridge for the first time and entering downtown. I vividly remember my first time in Uptown, the Steel Yard, seeing Trogs, and really feeling the oppression of the place. In terms of things added, Trogs were a great new enemy, loved them, and the new Raider armors, great. Asher's power armor, as well as the tribal power armor, weapons like the Infiltrators, Auto Axes, and the unique weapons like the Mauler, Perforator, and Metal Blaster were welcome additions to my arsenal. Gathering 100 steel ingots is an absolute snooze fest, but if you look up a guide video, you can have it done in like 15 minutes and walk away with an insane amount of goodies to help you on your way throughout this expansion. Would I recommend it? Hell yeah, I would recommend it. Like most of Fallout 3's expansions, it's a self-contained story that doesn't connect back to the main game at all, but even so, it's a self-contained story that is very, very much worth playing. No, no, no. That is not swamp gas you smell. That is what we have for number 11, and for number 11 we have another Fallout 3 expansion, and that is Point Lookout, which is a major Fallout 3 fan favorite, and for good reason. The funny thing about Point Lookout was when my mom had got me the Fallout 3 Game of the Year, I was enamored by everything I saw on the box, but the thing I was least interested in was actually Point Lookout, believe it or not. Not that it didn't look fun, I was just more interested in everything else I saw on offer, from Mothership Zeta to the Pit, which actually really impressed me when I played it, and I felt like it was the single best piece of content in the game, besides maybe Broken Steel, which hasn't made an appearance on this list yet. The new location, being Point Lookout itself, was a very well-crafted and scenic location. Swamps, swamp ghouls, swamp folk, mysterious buildings, a shifty ferryman, and an abandoned mansion, tribals, and one seriously slick non-feral ghoul. This was a new land brimming with opportunity and interest. One of the cool things is this story has quests that link all the way back to the Capital Wasteland via one of its more esoteric and spooky mysteries, the Dunwich Building. I don't want to say too much in fear of spoiling it, but it was an expansion that really knocked knocked it out of the park in every way for me except one, which was new armor additions. The armor selection added with the expansion sucked, in my opinion, which is a shame. The weapons, on the other hand, were pretty good and I enjoyed them quite a bit. Axes, lever action rifles, double barrel shotguns, and hell, even shovels. Combine those with the relentless and downright insane dialogue of the swamp folk, and their crazy running animations makes for a very spooky atmosphere and a really fun main quest to engage in. Would I recommend Point Lookout? Obviously. Just don't go in expecting new cool swamp themed armors. You'll get a handful of new weapons which are all fun. You'll get some old world political intrigue, tribal shenanigans, swampy horror, and some classic occult activity, but no armors. Finally, the first story expansion breaking into the top 10, and sticking with the swamp theme here, we have Far Harbor from Fallout 4. Easily the best story expansion in that game. I don't even think any other part of that game comes close. Far Harbor stayed really close to the theme of synths and freedom, so central to Fallout 4, so this felt like an interesting expansion to the main story, which also had quest tie-ins even in small ways. For the Nick Valentine enthusiasts among us, we can learn a lot about his past too, should we choose to bring him along, but getting there is a bit of a slog. One of the worst things in this expansion is the annoying minigame section where you have to unlock some synth memories. It's tedious, it's insanely boring, and if you don't do it, you can miss out on some fun optional content. The positives, though, are pretty damn good. Far Harbor is a cool settlement in and of itself and has cool settlement locations for building. The characters introduced are fun and interesting. They have great thoughts, feelings, and motivations, and not all of the characters are fans of their synth neighbors, and the open-ended multiple ends here are greatly appreciated, because it isn't just synths and Far Harbor residents here. The Children of Adam have a significant presence on the island, and in their usual fashion, well, they're a pain in the ass. But in Far Harbor, they are also an interesting and joinable faction with some really cool characters of their own. More positives include a new and really cool companion, Old Longfellow, but the new weapons and armors added are no joke either. While they are a bit limited, there are some standouts. The Marine armor and Adam's Bulwark are really good. The new Trapper armor, visually, very cool. The Inquisitor's Cowl, also a really good piece, and the Hunter clothing set is also nice as well. Weapons added include lever action rifles like Point Lookout, harpoon guns, meat hooks, and radium rifles. A unique super sledge is in Far Harbor called Adam's Judgment, which might be the coolest unique weapon in Fallout 4, if not one of the coolest unique weapons in any Bethesda game. Would I recommend Far Harbor? Easy yes. Aside from one section in the story, it's a must play for Fallout 4 and it hits all of the right notes with me. Coming in at number 9 is a DLC with absolutely no pulse, and I mean that in the very best way. We have Dawnguard, and this is a very special one to me. Like a lot of my most special memories with Elder Scrolls, this has a tie-in with my brother, and it goes all the way back to our days playing Oblivion. Playing Oblivion as kids, we were often afflicted with vampirism while exploring caves, and the quest to cure it was just a bit too much of a pain in the ass for our underdeveloped brain, so we lost a lot of characters that way. This was also before we had learned that a cure disease potion could cure vampirism if it's in its first 24 hours. So as a result, we developed a real hatred for the vampires of the Elder Scrolls universe, and that was a hatred that continued well into Skyrim. And when we heard there was an expansion coming where the central theme was vampires and vampire hunters, we knew which side we were taking, because we had sworn to one another as kids that we would never become vampires in the Elder Scrolls and would always destroy them with the utmost prejudice when we came across them. Now, I have always stuck to that pledge. I have never played as a vampire, nor do I ever intend to. But we had no such deal for lycanthropes. The changes Dawnguard made to werewolves in the form of their skill tree was an absolute delight for me. Visually, the changes to vampires were very, very welcome, as well as this expansion made them into much better enemies. The addition of death hounds, vampire armors, the return of crossbows, oh, it just made me so happy, which is why Dawnguard goes down as an all-time favorite for me. Would I recommend Dawnguard? Without a doubt. It'll be a fresh challenge for your Dragonborn. You'll get a cool new follower and a whole new host of fun weapons and abilities depending on which side you take in the conflict. Not to mention, it has an absolutely awesome cast of characters on all sides of the conflict. If you're like me and you hate vampires and you cut them down whenever you come across them, this is the expansion for you. If you love playing as a vampire, then this is obviously a must-have piece of content for any Dragonborn. And if you're somebody that just wants to increase your abilities and your experience as a werewolf, then obviously Dawnguard is a piece of content you're going to want in your library. Now, we can't expect God to do all the work, which is why at number 8 we have Honest Hearts, a New Vegas fan favorite in terms of tone, themes, characters, and dialogue, all of which rest squarely on the shoulders of one man, Joshua Graham. Great first name, by the way. The toughest and baddest and toughest and baddest and toughest and baddest dude in Utah. Easily a top 5 character in the Fallout universe, probably even a top 3 if my heart is being honest. I really loved learning the story of the Burned Man in the base game and seeing graffiti across the Mojave about how the Burned Man lives, and this added a layer of fun onto the character. So when I first heard about this expansion coming and that the Burned Man would be a central character, I was very, very ready for it. What I wasn't ready for was how absolutely great the writing would be. It tackled the themes of innocent still being alive in the Fallout world after all this time, fighting the White Legs, learning about the new Canaanites, the Sorrows, and dead horses while simultaneously exploring Zion Valley and uncovering the mysteries of the father, Randall Clark, and his story. Oh, so good. Overall, it made for an absolute delight, and Joshua Graham has some of the best dialogue and voice lines in any Fallout game, easily putting his dialogue and delivery on par with another New Vegas character I love, Leggett Lanius, or other characters beloved in the series that also have great acting, like Sergeant Arch Dornan, the Lieutenant, and Frank Horrigan, all of which I consider to be the best voice characters in the series, as well as the best written when you're speaking to them. The addition of the Desert Ranger armor and some of the gecko-backed armors were fun, and the loot haul at the end was pretty great. Weapons like Yaogwai gauntlets and the 45 pistols and the submachine guns will certainly give players a lot of new options when coming back to the Mojave, not to mention tomahawks as thrown weapons, or the Dead Horses war clubs. I'm personally partial to the Survivalist rifle. Would I recommend Honest Hearts? In a running theme for the ones higher up on this list, of course I would. It's a no-brainer. The environment and environmental storytelling are absolutely peak, and characters like Follows Chalk, Daniel, and Waking Cloud are all really well written. I don't want to take away from them, I just think Joshua Graham has the bigger impact, and for good reason. And in the name of the living gods of Morrowind, we arrive at number 7, taking it all the way back to Elder Scrolls 3. We have the Tribunal expansion. Tribunal dealt with some of the most interesting political machinations I think we've ever seen in an Elder Scrolls game. Forget Skyrim's copy-paste Civil War. Tribunal not only had you working your way through the complex political web of Morrowind's king, Helsith Lalu, but it also had you dealing with the final hours of the Tribunal's strength. A story involving the other two gods of the Tribunal, Almalexia and Sothasil. Mournhold and the Clockwork City may not be terribly impressive to the eyes these days, but when I was a kid first visiting, I was mesmerized by it. Even those insanely overpowered goblins in the sewers gave me reason to awe. Mainly because they just look so insane in Morrowind. Hell, Gaenor, the gold-obsessed Bosmer, will give even the strongest Nerevarines pause. Tribunal was a great piece of content to add to Morrowind. It was a story that respected the player's intellect in a game that was already well known for respecting the player's ability to reason. Suffice to say, like most of Morrowind, this will be a challenge for you. No two ways about it. But it will be a worthy challenge because the way the story plays out, I think, is really, really cool. As a kid, when I played Morrowind and realized it took place in Vardenfell and not the mainland of Morrowind, the mainland became a slight obsession of mine. When I learned Mournhold was on the mainland and the capital of Morrowind to boot, that really brought me great joy and deepened my love for the Elder Scrolls because I finally felt like I was exploring well outside of what I had always known, and up until that point, all I had known was Vardenfell. Would I recommend Tribunal? No doubt about it. Anything that expands the Elder Scrolls 3 adventures is cause for celebration with me. I think Mournhold has many secrets worth exploring, and even these days, I find myself still drawn to this piece of content. Maybe because it's the only time we're on mainland Morrowind in a single-player title. Moving from the lands of Morrowind to the central-most province named Cyrodiil. This was a landmark expansion for me, so moving right in at number 6, we have Knights of the Nine for the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, and Oblivion's first appearance on this list. When I say this was a landmark expansion for me, I mean it. This was the content that convinced my brother and I to dive not just into the lore of the Nine Divines, but all of the theologies of Tamriel to the best of our little mind's abilities at the time. Whatever scraps we could find on the internet, this was before wikis were common and before we knew about the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages, or UESP for people in a hurry. It inspired us to find books about religion in-game and study them to our heart's content. I remember we would sit outside in the summer, riding bikes or running around, discussing things like Anu, Padme, Sithis, the Daedra, Divines, Magnus, and the Magna Gi. It really opened our eyes a lot to how different cultures on Tamriel see the Divines and the Daedra. Having played a lot of Morrowind, some of these ideas weren't terribly new to me, but I was a lot younger, so the deeper mysteries and lore didn't catch my attention, or were maybe a bit too complex for my little brain to handle. This expansion also marked some of the best times he and I ever had just role-playing characters. While we RP'd many sinister assassins and sneaky thieves, as well as noble warriors and powerful mages, something about role-playing a crusader with a small host of knights at your disposal just hit differently at the time. Just the hours of sitting around the Priory of the Nine, chatting with our knights and listening to their conversations and plans for adventures, recruiting one as a follower to clear a cave and pretending we were on a holy mission, are among some of my favorite childhood memories. The Crusaders' relics added to the game were just great additions, no matter your choice of weapon, be it blade or blunt. They had a weapon for you, either using the Sword of the Crusader or Mace of the Crusader. Assembling the full kit is one of Oblivion's greatest feelings. It's like getting all the pieces of Exodia. Do I recommend Knights of the Nine? Yes. I absolutely cannot recommend it enough, because the added story and new lore to uncover about Pelennor Whitestrake, Umaril the Unfeathered, and how the Knights of Nine fell from grace is absolutely a delight. And the combat, the new enemies added, Aurorans, oh, love fighting them. Knights of the Nine, play it. Play it right now, play it yesterday, play it tomorrow. Moving forward, we are now raising the level cap to 30 and cracking our top 5. And with that, we have Fallout 3's final entry on this list, Broken Steel. I know a lot of the stuff in Broken Steel should have been base game, like continuing after the main story, but I do think the post-game content was significant enough to make a full expansion out of it. Finishing the battle against the Enclave and seeing the aftermath of the Purifier and how things have shifted in the Capital Wasteland while you were unconscious was really interesting, especially as someone who played Fallout 3 for many hours and many playthroughs before we had any official post-game content. As a youngster, my mind wondered a lot what happened after the Purifier activated, and waking up 2 weeks later at the Citadel was an absolute delight, because Broken Steel did everything I wanted it to do, and so much more. The addition of new kinds of Enclave soldiers was very welcome too, because Enclave Hellfire Troopers were among my favorite enemies when I think back on Fallout 3, as well as those newly added super mutant overlords. The addition of new weapons as well, like the Tri-Beam Laser Rifle, Heavy Incinerator, and Tesla Cannon were big fun for me. The Tesla Cannon became a staple item for me because I just loved blasting Enclave vertibirds out of the sky before they could land their infantry. It's a joy having that much power in your hands. To top it all off, post-story content allows you to hunt super mutants and return their blood samples to Paladin Tristan, and to gather up scrap for Scribe Rothschild. From a roleplay perspective, this was a phenomenal send-off for my Fallout 3 characters. After I had done everything, I'd spend another 20 or 30 hours just deep in roleplay as a Brotherhood Knight, collecting tech and hunting mutants with my friend, Star Paladin Cross. Given that there was a whole host of new and fun perks in addition to a 10 level increase for the new level cap of 30, that just goes to show that these new weapons and enemies made Broken Steel for me Fallout 3's best DLC. It should be a no-brainer that I recommend this expansion, because the biggest draw is playing after the main quest concludes. Giving Fallout 3 a definitive end was a bonehead move on Bethesda's part, but one I was glad to see corrected. And running all the way back to the Mojave Wasteland, we have New Vegas's last entry on this list, and Fallout's last entry in general. We have Dead Money, my absolute favorite New Vegas expansion and my favorite Fallout expansion in general, but I will admit it is neck and neck with Broken Steel. When I was first putting these down on a list and thinking this out, this list was originally very fluid. As I looked at each one and inspected what I liked and what I didn't like, because on this list when I first made it, Dead Money was actually number 6, but once I really started thinking about it, I knew I had to move it higher. It narrowed in on Broken Steel, and they duked it out in my head for a while, with Dead Money just getting over that hump for our number 4 spot here. I remember seeing the Dead Money trailer for the first time and being so enamored by it. I saw a Nightkin, a bald lady, a post-apocalyptic casino heist, and of course, the Ghost People, Dead Money's premier new enemy type. For their first appearance on the Fallout stage, they did not disappoint. Ghost People are tough in a fight, and unless you blow their heads off or their limbs, they will get back up. They'll be coming at you like Michael Myers or The Undertaker, and it's absolutely awesome. The story of Dead Money is an action-packed heist. You're working with an obsessive, former Brotherhood of Steel elder named Elijah, and I say working very loosely. The vault of this casino, the Sierra Madre, is said to be the home of a wealth of old world technology, and we know how the West Coast Brotherhood is with their love of technology. Between Dog and God, Dean Domino, and Christine Royce, you have an all-star lineup for companions. Added weapons like the hollow rifle, automatic rifle, bear trap fist, the various cosmic knife types, knife spears, police pistol. Oh, this really makes the Dead Money arsenal at your fingertips just absolutely incredible. Adding to that, I think the Sierra Madre security armor looks pretty damn cool. Dead Money is probably the hardest of the expansion packs in my opinion, and while Old World Blues and Lonesome Road are no walks in the park, Dead Money to me was the most challenge I ever had in New Vegas. Do I recommend it? Yes. Everything this high up is recommended to me. I think Dead Money has some of the best ending slides in the game, and they really amp you up to play another expansion because they are still really fun and they are an interconnected story. For fans of Veronica in the base game, Dead Money gives you some more interaction with her. In short, play Dead Money. Even experienced couriers will find a much tougher fight than they bargained for, but it's a story that is very nuanced. Please remember to let go and begin again. Started at the last and now we're closer to the first, which means in this number 3 spot we go to my favorite location in all of the Elder Scrolls, the island of Solstheim, as the last Dragonborn to take on the first Dragonborn. So you can guess the expansion here is Dragonborn for Skyrim, and where do I even begin? The soundscape, so reminiscent of my time in Vardenfell, Raven Rock, Tel Mithrin, Skull Village, Apocrypha. I mean, there's so much to love here. Solstheim is my favorite location in all of Tamriel. I loved it when I first went there as a kid playing Morrowind, and I loved it even more as a teenager playing Skyrim. By the time of Skyrim, the island of Solstheim has gone through quite the dramatic ecological shift. It now resembles the ashlands of Vardenfell more than it resembled the pine forest and tundras of Skyrim. This serves as a great backdrop for the story at play because you won't just be in Solstheim. You'll be in Apocrypha, Hermaeus Mora's realm of oblivion. Visually, Apocrypha is an absolute delight. Floating pages and tomes of ancient and future knowledge litter the landscape. The things added in this expansion are legion. Over 30 quests, new characters, and new creatures like serpentine dragons, ash spawn, seekers, lurkers, werebears, and the return of the little reiklings. The armors added are chitin, bone mold, stalwart, Skyrim and Nordic armors, beautifully crafted, and they hit me in the right way nostalgically. New spells and dragon shouts are introduced here as well, which only made me, as the last Dragonborn, feel even more powerful. Raven Rock as the hub settlement is visually very interesting, and it's packed full of fun quests and callbacks. The characters running the town are well fleshed out, and overall, better written than most characters you'll find in base game Skyrim. Now, I've spent a lot of time exploring the realms of Oblivion in single-player games, from the Deadlands of Mehrunes Dagon to the Shivering Isles of Sheogorath, but Apocrypha will hold a special place because of how much fun I had navigating it. It's easy to see how Mori and Xenos could get trapped there. When it comes to speaking about Dragonborn, I get scatterbrained because it was just such a fun and amazing experience for me. Top to bottom, I enjoyed every second of it. From exploring the ruins of Fort Frostmoth in the south, all the way to Castle Karstag's ruins. This was a nostalgic-laden adventure, and it didn't just rely on nostalgia alone to carry me. I genuinely liked the story. In addition, Apocrypha was just a chef's kiss idea. Big props to Dragonborn. Would I recommend it? Bruh. It's number 3 on my list. Go get Dragonborn, and like I said earlier, play it yesterday. It is that good. And let's rewind the clock a few hundred years to the 3rd era of Tamriel, but keep it right here on Solstheim. That's right, our number 2 position goes to Blood Moon from the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. It's actually funny how Dragonborn is almost a mirror to Blood Moon, because in Morrowind you go to Skyrim by way of visiting Solstheim, and in Skyrim you go to Morrowind by way of visiting Solstheim. And in each story, a Daedric prince is usually involved. The main thing when thinking back to my days as a kid playing Morrowind and going to Solstheim was the first time I felt like I was on a true frontier. Now I know Vardenfell has a lot of ashlands and frontier, but something about leaving Fort Frostmoth and just walking north felt truly open and truly wild to me. Wild in the sense of me being in a wilderness. Most likely the forests and the snow gave me that feeling, considering Vardenfell was all ashlands and swamps. I remember as a kid learning that all of Tamriel, ostensibly the entire world of the Elder Scrolls, was the Empire. Now don't go on about Akavir, I'm well aware it exists, thank you. But learning the whole world was essentially the Empire, I kind of felt a little suffocated. I just wanted to leave the Empire, and going to Northern Solstheim and Morrowind made me feel like I was truly outside the bounds of law and order, and in a way I was kind of outside of the bounds of the entire world. It's a feeling that's hard to describe, but ultimately a feeling that has made me love Solstheim and this expansion so much. The ability to become a werewolf, Karstag Castle, Skull Village and their honor guards, Fort Frostmoth, Raven Rock, and the little Reiklings on their tusked bristlebacks. Everything about Blood Moon just brings me fond memories of my childhood. Also, Hircine looked so cool when he appeared in the flesh, just like Karstag. 2 characters I really love seeing for the first time. I still think Karstag in Blood Moon is one of, if not the coolest looking creature or character the games have ever had, outside of maybe some of the dragon designs. I went back and played Blood Moon as an adult a few years back, and I gotta say, it still holds up, like all of Morrowind does. I know I coasted a lot on nostalgia there, but I can say confidently that this expansion is one I thoroughly enjoy even to this day, despite Morrowind's very clunky mechanics. The addition of things like wolf and snow wolf armor really blew me away as a kid. It looked so cool, I remember falling in love with it immediately. Same with the bear and snow bear gear and the Nordic mail and ancient steel. Nordic silver and Stalrim weapons being added were so cool. I was in love with them from the word go, and don't even get me started on Stormfang. Absolutely love that sword. This was the first time I had ever experienced a quote-unquote expansion pack for a game. I was vaguely aware of the term because I would hear kids at school talk about World of Warcraft expansions and how it added new things to the game and new places to explore. It was, at least to me, a revolutionary concept, and getting to experience an expansion pack for myself in a single player game was one of the first times I felt like this elite gamer as a kid, a feeling which still warmly resonates with me to this day. So would I recommend it? Of course. I admitted at the beginning of this video that this was a personal list and very biased, extremely biased, exceedingly biased, some might say, but I don't care. Blood Moon is top tier Bethesda content, and I'm willing to die on that hill. I cannot wait until the Blood Moon rises again, and we are sent to Hircine's hunt once more. Here we are! We are at the top of the list. It's number 1, and come on, deep down, you knew this was the answer. Topping off our list here, we have the Shivering Isles for the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. This is, in my opinion, the single greatest piece of content that Bethesda Game Studios has ever produced, and like I said about Blood Moon, I will die on that hill. From the second the world of the Shivering Isles opens up to the player, you can see a new type of radiance and beauty so different from what you've come to know adventuring in Cyrodiil. The lands of Mania, Dementia, and the city of New Sheoth are absolute wonders to behold for their time, and I believe, not just in Oblivion Remastered, but Oblivion Game of the Year from 2009, I believe that they still hold up visually to this day. When I look back and think of some of my best memories playing Elder Scrolls, my brain always goes back to the Shivering Isles, specifically 2 quests in the Shivering Isles, a better mousetrap and baiting the trap. If you've never played it or a younger person diving into Oblivion the first time via the remaster, I won't say too much, but those are such good quests. Some of the most fun you'll ever have in a dungeon or a very structured environment in the Elder Scrolls series. This was an expansion that hit the right tones and themes at the right time for me. When my brother Brian and I were taking our first dives into the deeper lore, the metaphysical aspects of the Elder Scrolls, and we were learning about things like mantling, the process by which a mortal becomes a god. So to have an expansion where we get to see that process happen and actively be part of it was such an insane concept, and one that has earned my everlasting love and admiration. This is where I will definitely dive into spoilers for the expansion. This is actually a minor regret of mine when it came to this game. So early on, my brother and I, as we have played Oblivion a lot since we were kids and teenagers, which honestly isn't too different from our time as adults nearly 20 years later, still playing a lot of Oblivion. I remember when we were playing on a character and decided to finally explore the Shivering Isles for the first time after avoiding it before. Once we finally gave it a fair shake, we were enamored by it and spent days just running around fighting gnarls, zealots, grummites, and of course, the battle with the Gatekeeper, the most iconic creature in the Isles, maybe one of the most iconic creatures in all of the Elder Scrolls. But I remember he fell asleep and I ended up finishing the Shivering Isles main quest, learning that Sheogorath was Jiggalag, and eventually mantling Sheogorath to become the Daedric Prince of Madness yourself. Doing so came with all sorts of cool abilities, controlling the weather, getting bodyguards, your own dancer, but it also came with responsibilities to defend the realm and its inhabitants from monsters and outsiders. When he woke up, I told him I was now Sheogorath, the god of madness. He didn't believe me until I began talking to the Golden Saints and Dark Seducers who addressed me as such, and I began showing off all these insane and fun new abilities at my disposal, much to his incredible surprise and joy. Changing the weather, defending the realm from monsters, those may be considered gimmicks now compared to newer, and I use that term loosely, games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, but for us at the time, it was the coolest and greatest experience we had ever had, not just in an Elder Scrolls game, but in video games in general. The addition of new types of armor like Amber and Madness armors really hit the spot for me. Visually, they just looked so awesome, and by the time we reached Shivering Isles on most characters, we were already mythical level demigods walking around the world of men. So when we would get Dawnfang and Duskfang, and it was a weapon that perfectly capped off our otherwise perfect beings. In addition to those, we were just always having fun with the little Grummite weapons that those little jerks had, and I thought they were visually appealing, but I never really used them much. I just thought they looked cool. As I said, by the time we hit the Isles, we are pretty much Pelennor reborn. Shivering Isles for me is nothing short of a mosaic or a beautifully woven tapestry of some of my favorite experiences with my brother Brian. Years of companionship, joy, and adventure before I eventually moved across the country. The kind of memories that have always kept me in high spirits, especially at times when high spirits were in short supply. So would I recommend Shivering Isles? Absolutely. So there you have it, folks, my very, very biased list about the very best story expansions for all major Bethesda RPGs. This one was an absolute blast to put together because all of them, even the ones at the bottom of the list, hold a very special place in my heart. I grew up on Bethesda games. Bethesda games have been a cornerstone of some of my very best friendships, the closeness I share with my brother Brian, and the soil from which the blossoming of new friendships takes place. And a lot of these friendships I've made since starting YouTube, they sprung from the soil of Bethesda games. So taking this dive, sitting down, and really figuring out which I loved and why was actually very fun for me. Now let's switch to some face cam for some final thoughts, thank yous, and goodbyes. And I hope you had as much fun listening to that and kind of reminiscing with me there as I did writing it. Didn't have any fun editing it, but I do very much love the writing part. Oh, God, editing videos is absolutely the worst. If there's anyone out there that wants to edit for me for free, I would be most grateful. I got nothing to offer you, but I would totally take the editing help, just throwing that out into the universe and to the 622 people that subscribe. That said, jokes aside here, I really did have a lot of fun with this one, and I want to just kind of let you guys know, the next video coming up, I've got it recorded, it just needs to be cut. I've already got the thumbnail and everything. It is a quiz that was created by our Discord moderator, Exodus, and my brother, Brian, who is also in our Discord as Udwulf. They created this insane Elder Scrolls lore quiz and a point system, which will be explained in the video, and it'll be something that you, as the viewer, can also do as I'm doing it. It's roughly about 2 hours long, because we don't do short videos around here. We make shorts, but most videos tend to be quite long. So that is coming up. I don't know exactly when it's going to be. Probably sometime in November, early November, because next week I am going up to Michigan to see Lena and Brian. So, yeah, I go on Friday. It's Sunday for me now. So, yeah, that's going to be coming, but I just want you to know, some of the audio is a bit rough. We recorded it, like, on a Discord call. And, I'm just going to say it. Upon reviewing the footage, this man, these two gentlemen that did this quiz, Exo and Brian, they did some of them questions are straight up BS, okay? I'm not gonna lie. It'll be something like, they'll hit you with stuff like, oh, you know, who, and this is just an example, but it'll be like, who's the Daedric Prince of Madness? You'll be like, oh, it's Sheogorath. And then the next question will be, name all Daedra in alphabetical order in under 4 seconds. Like, some of the questions are just fucking absolutely crazy. Fun, and a lot of insane deep lore. Some of the questions are written like riddles, so if you happen to watch that after this video, like it's already out or something, just know that it's pretty intense. But there is a lot of fun stuff in there, and if you're like me and you consider yourself a lore master, this is really going to put you through your paces. It most certainly did with me. And near the end of it, you could tell I was getting a bit hangry. Because we hadn't eaten any food that, I hadn't eaten anything except lunch that day, and we were recording well into the evening. But it is a lot of fun. You will have a lot of fun with it. I did as well, and once that video comes out, kind of the point system and the ranking system we have for it is, it's explained, but just know, the video itself, it is a little rough. Like, it's a bit rough around the edges, because it is our first time trying something like that. There are discussions we have had for another video of that type in the future, but more focused. So, you know, I don't want to take too much of your time with it. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it. Please consider subscribing to the channel. I love doing this stuff. This channel had just hit over 100,000 views, and I could not be more excited and more invigorated to create content. So with all that YouTuber crap out of the way, hope you have a great rest of your day or whatever you're doing, and I will see you on the next one.